Welcome to District Command Central, your go-to source for the latest news and updates on the Washington Commanders. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, so you never miss a play. Welcome to District Command Central, your go-to source for the latest news and updates on the Washington Commanders. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a play. The Washington Commanders find themselves in that familiar, uneasy stretch of the NFL calendar when the bye week doesn't feel like rest, doesn't feel like a turning point, but instead feels like a long pause before difficult truths set in. Sitting at 3-8 after a frustrating loss to the Miami Dolphins, the organization is staring down the barrel of what could become one of the most consequential off-seasons in recent franchise history. And if there's one thing that's becoming increasingly clear, it's that General Manager Adam Peters is heading toward a crossroads that may ultimately define his tenure in Washington. Fans can sense it. Analysts already talk about it like it's inevitable, and inside the building, even if no one says it out loud, everyone knows this roster is heading for a seismic overhaul. And some familiar faces might not survive the shakeup. The list of players under scrutiny is long, but few feel the pressure more intensely right now than safety Quan Martin. What makes the conversation around the Commanders so charged is how drastically the roster has deteriorated over the course of the season. Injuries piled up, aging starters regressed, and what once looked like a defense with identity and swagger slowly fell into a pattern of miscommunication, slow reactions, and missed opportunities. Peters has roughly $100 million in projected cap space to work with, a massive number in theory, but one that shrinks fast when you start plugging the holes across all three levels of the defense, rebuilding depth and preparing for extensions down the road. The front office knows that the fan base is out of patience and out of interest in half measures. They want bold, they want decisive, they want a plan they can look at and say, yes, this franchise is finally moving with purpose. But the real twist here is that while Peters has money, he doesn't have the luxury of draft capital. After standing pat at the trade deadline, the Commanders enter the 2026 NFL Draft with only 6 total picks. 6. That puts enormous weight on the expected first-rounder, which if current projections hold should land within the top 10. And that single pick may become the pivot point for everything. Do you stay put and grab a blue-chip talent, or do you trade back, stack additional selections, and try to build more evenly across the roster? Every option comes with risk, and every option changes the trajectory of the team in a different way. Experts around the league have been split on what Washington's approach should be. However, a growing number of analysts insist that the Commanders cannot afford to overlook the defensive side of the ball with their premium pick. The weaknesses are too glaring, the collapses too frequent, the identity too hollow. And if Adam Peters believes this defense needs a foundational piece to build around, then the direction becomes clearer. That's where safety Caleb Downs enters the conversation. And suddenly, Quan Martin's future begins to dim. Cody Williams from Fansided recently mocked Downs a standout defensive back from Ohio State to the Commanders at No. 7 overall, and the argument is compelling. Downs brings something Washington's secondary has been starving for: playmaking instincts, positional versatility, and the ability to diagnose plays before they fully develop. He's that rare safety who doesn't just fill a role, he elevates everyone around him. Williams described Downs as a player whose impact could instantly transform Washington's defense, and when you watch the tape, you understand why. Downs flies around the field with a confidence and decisiveness that you simply can't teach. He covers ground smoothly, tackles with precision, and has a natural feel for where the ball is going. Those qualities are priceless in today's NFL, especially for a team that has struggled so dramatically on the back end. Now, the debate around drafting a safety in the top 10 is nothing new. Some traditionalists argue that positional value should steer a team toward an edge rusher, corner, or offensive tackle instead. But this argument loses traction fast when you're talking about a player who can function as a defensive multiplier, a guy who affects the pass game, the run game, and every formation the offense tries to throw at him. And the Commanders, frankly, are in no position to worry about positional philosophy. They need players who change games. They need leaders on the field. They need someone whose presence forces offensive coordinators to adjust their game plan. Downs fits that bill more than any other defensive back expected to enter the draft. And that brings us back to Quan Martin, a player who entered the season with excitement, bold predictions, and hopes of a breakout campaign that simply did not materialize, whether it's been consistency, confidence, or just poor fit within a struggling defensive scheme. Martin hasn't taken the leap that Washington needed from him in year two. He's shown flashes, but flashes don't win games, and they certainly don't secure long-term roster spots when a franchise is preparing for a rebuild. When you add in the struggles of Jeremy Reeves, Percy Butler, and Tyler Owens, all of whom look more like depth pieces or special teamers than reliable long-term starters, the Commanders' situation at safety becomes even more dire. Sure, Will Harris is expected to be back, but that's not enough. You don't pass on a premier talent like Downs just because you have a serviceable veteran. You don't ignore a potential franchise cornerstone just to preserve the status quo. Free agency can help fill some gaps, but Peters can't rely on patchwork fixes alone if the goal is sustained meaningful improvement. And while new additions often revive a unit, they also create casualties. In this case, drafting Downs almost certainly places Martin squarely on the chopping block. Heading into the final year of his rookie contract, it's not personal, it's business. This league is ruthless that way. The Commanders will need to make tough decisions, some unpopular, some overdue, some that might sting in the moment but pay off in the long run. And if Downs is the pick, if he becomes the anchor of a rejuvenated defense, the reality is that Martin's window to prove himself will narrow significantly. Washington wouldn't be drafting Downs to sit behind Martin or to rotate in sparingly. They'd be drafting him to start, to lead, to become the heart of a defense that has lacked direction for far too long. That means Martin's role shifts from potential breakout candidate to depth piece fighting for snaps. And for a player who arrived with such promise, that's a tough pill to swallow. Still, that's the end. A tour of football. Opportunity comes quickly, and it leaves even faster. For Quan Martin, the message is loud and impossible to ignore. The clock is ticking. The Commanders are preparing to rebuild. They're preparing to invest in youth, athleticism, and high upside players who can become future stars. Downs checks those boxes emphatically. And unless Martin shows something dramatic in the remaining stretch of the season, or unless Peters decides to overhaul other areas first, the writing on the wall grows darker by the day. One thing is certain, change is coming to Washington. Big change, necessary change, and while no one can predict exactly how the offseason will unfold, the early signs point toward a franchise ready to move forward with speed and conviction. If Downs does become the Commanders' top pick, fans will likely celebrate the arrival of a defensive spark plug who can finally stabilize a chaotic secondary, but in the shadows of that celebration, Quan Martin will be facing the harsh truth that the NFL rarely gives second chances to players who don't seize their first. If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure to smash that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts on the Commanders' latest moves. We want to hear from you. If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure to smash that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts on the Commanders' latest moves. We want to hear from you. There's a buzz swirling around the Commanders' training facility that's impossible to ignore. And it's the kind of story that gets everyone talking. From die-hard fans to casual viewers catching highlights online, the whispers started quietly, just murmurs in the halls of the CT. But now they've escalated into a full-blown narrative that could shake the team's depth chart. To its core, word is that a young defensive back, barely out of the draft pool and still considered a raw prospect by some, has been absolutely dominating practice in ways that even the coaching staff didn't fully anticipate. The kind of dominance that doesn't just get you noticed, it makes you impossible to ignore. Observers at the facility say this player is showing a rare combination of speed, instincts, and tenacity that has left veteran receivers scrambling and teammates whispering in awe every drill, every simulated scenario. This kid is making plays that look almost like they're straight out of a highlight reel. And that's not just exaggeration. Coaches have reportedly stopped sessions mid-practice to take note of what's happening on the field. The most shocking part of this emerging story is not just the performance itself, but the ripple effect it's causing in the team's hierarchy. Sources suggest that head coach Dan Quinn, known for his meticulous planning and careful rotations, is seriously considering a move that would have seemed unthinkable just a few weeks ago. He's reportedly contemplating starting this young defensive back in the upcoming games, an audacious decision that could redefine the Commanders' defensive strategy. For a coach with Quinn's pedigree, someone who usually leans on experience, leadership, and established track records, this is a gamble that tells you just how impressed he is with what he's seeing. Conversations behind closed doors, insiders claim, are centered around how to integrate this player into the starting lineup without disrupting the chemistry of the backfield, which has been a point of concern and occasional critique in previous seasons. Fans are already speculating wildly. Social media feeds are lighting up with clips, some unverified, showing the DB making aggressive, clean breaks on routes, anticipating passes before they're thrown, and shadowing receivers with the kind of precision that makes you question why he wasn't on every fantasy draft board. Analysts are calling it a coming-out performance and noting that when a young player can force a veteran coach like Quinn to rethink the starting lineup, it's a sign that something exceptional is unfolding. There's talk of him being the kind of disruptor who could change the defensive identity of the Commanders in real time, someone whose instincts and athleticism could give them a new edge against some of the league's most potent offenses. The narrative taking hold is not just about one practice or one game plan. It's about the possibility of a generational talent quietly emerging before the season really heats up. Insiders hint at the behind-the-scenes dynamics that make this story even juicier. Apparently, teammates are split between excitement and disbelief. Some veterans are thrilled, seeing the energy and hunger this young DB brings, the kind of intensity that pushes everyone else to elevate their game. Others are reportedly wary, wondering if the leap from practice dominance to in-game consistency might be too steep too quickly. The locker room chatter is said to range from cautious optimism to full-blown hype, with subtle nods to Quinn's decision-making style, known for valuing discipline, adaptability, and football IQ. Quinn seems to be looking beyond the raw talent and seeing someone who can not only execute plays but also learn, adjust, and thrive under pressure. Observers inside the facility suggest that his internal discussions weigh heavily on how to balance experience with potential. And this young defensive back is at the center of that balance. There are hints, too, about the training methods that have allowed this player to rise so quickly. Reports suggest an intense focus on technique refinement, route recognition, and hand-eye coordination drills that push him beyond standard defensive back training. Coaches are reportedly customizing sessions to simulate real game scenarios. And each week, the player is said to show incremental improvements that compound in surprising ways. It's one of those cases where practice performance translates in real time to a tangible threat on the field, something scouts and analysts dream of seeing, but rarely witness at such a high level so early in a career. The narrative forming is one of meteoric ascent, an underdog story where preparation, talent, and opportunity collide in a moment that could define a season. Rumors even suggest that the team's strategy meetings have shifted slightly in tone, with assistants quietly brainstorming ways to capitalize on his strengths while minimizing any potential weaknesses. Everyone involved seems to recognize that this isn't just about a single young player. It's about the potential domino effect on the defensive scheme as a whole. Analysts are already projecting scenarios where his presence could force opposing quarterbacks into uncomfortable situations, make wide receivers rethink their routes, and generally introduce a level of unpredictability into the Commanders' defensive front. The chatter isn't just internal. Either sports media outlets and podcasts are starting to pick up on the story, creating a perfect storm of speculation, excitement, and mounting expectation. And the most tantalizing aspect, none of this is officially confirmed. The team hasn't made any announcements, and Quinn himself has remained characteristically tight-lipped when pressed in interviews. But insiders insist the message is clear. Something unprecedented is brewing at the Commanders' CT, and it's centered around this young defensive back who, according to multiple reports, could very well start games sooner than anyone dared hope. The suspense is palpable. Fans are left in a state of eager anticipation, dissecting every practice clip, analyzing every hint of Quinn's remarks, and imagining the possibilities if this rumor proves true. Could this be the start of a breakout season for a future star? Could Quinn's bold move redefine the defensive identity of the team? The questions hang in the air, unanswered but electric with potential. What's striking about this whole story is how it blurs the line between rumor and reality, creating a narrative that feels immediate, alive, and almost cinematic in its unfolding. The young DB's dominance in practice, the subtle nods from a seasoned coach, the whispers among teammates, and the speculative buzz among fans together create a story that feels bigger than the sum of its parts. If these murmurs are anything close to the truth, we're looking at a shift in momentum for the Commanders, one that could ripple across the league as opponents scramble to adjust. And while there's no official confirmation yet, The very fact that this story is circulating so widely is indicative of the impact this player is having on those who see him up close. In a league where headlines often follow highlights, here we have a narrative that precedes them, a buzzworthy, electrifying rumor that could very well shape the conversation around the Commanders for weeks, maybe even the entire season. The excitement is compounded by the sheer unpredictability of it all. Fans are speculating not just about how Quinn will deploy him, but how opposing teams will react, what adjustments will be made, and whether this young player can maintain this level of performance under the bright lights and high stakes of actual games. It's a classic underdog story in the making, except it's unfolding in real time and under the watchful eyes of one of the league's most respected coaches. Every practice, every informal scrimmage, every sideline observation could feed into a larger storyline that defines careers and potentially alters team strategies. And while we wait for the official word, the rumor mill continues to churn, feeding social media threads, sports talk shows, and fan forums with a mix of excitement, disbelief, and hopeful anticipation. In short, the Commanders' training facility is buzzing like never before, and at the center of the storm is a young defensive back who, according to multiple sources, might just start games in the near future under Dan Quinn's guidance. The story has all the ingredients of a breakout legend in the making: raw talent, a coach willing to take a risk, teammates reacting in real time, and a fan base on the edge of its collective seats. Whether this turns into reality or remains just a tantalizing rumor, it's the kind of narrative that captures imaginations, fuels debates, and reminds everyone why we love sports: the drama, the unpredictability, and the possibility that the next big star could emerge at any moment, right under our noses. Thanks for tuning into District Command Central. Make sure to subscribe and follow us for all the Commanders news you need. Until next time, keep the faith and hail to the Commanders. Thanks for tuning into District Command Central. Make sure to subscribe and follow us for all the Commanders news you need. Until next time, keep the faith and hail to the Commanders.